On the outskirts of Flagstaff, Arizona, a bitter November wind howled through the pines, swirling ice crystals across the moonlit snow. The cold bit straight through Jessica Miller's ranger jacket as she trudged along the narrow path, her boots crunching beneath her. She drew a shaky breath, glancing up at the sky where clouds threatened to choke out the stars. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Aspen, her sturdy brown mare, picked her way carefully beside her, the horse's coat dusted with frost, breath steaming in the air. Every so often, Aspen would nuzzle Jessica's gloved hand, grounding her. Trailing nervously a few steps behind was Willow, a gangly chestnut filly with wide, uncertain eyes, recently rescued, still learning to trust. Jessica spoke softly, more for herself than the horses. "Let's just get through the night," she murmured, voice a white wisp in the air. They'd been checking the outer boundaries of the park for signs of poachers or lost hikers, but so far all Jessica had found was the cold and her own gnawing thoughts. Each step seemed to stir up old ghosts, moments she'd failed to save someone, memories she never seemed to shake, even after years in the field. She pulled her hat lower, pressing forward, determined not to let her past haunt her tonight. Suddenly, Aspen's head shot up, ears pricked and alert. The mare gave a sharp, worried neigh, something Jessica had never heard from her before. Aspen lunged forward, yanking the lead from Jessica's hand, and barreled off the trail toward the dense trees. "Aspen, wait!" Jessica called, heart thudding, her breath catching in her throat. For one wild second, fear gripped her. What if Aspen disappeared into the woods? What if she lost both horses in this blizzard? But she had no time to hesitate. Willow, skittish but loyal, bolted after Aspen. Jessica cursed under her breath, chasing after them, boots slipping, branches clawing at her coat and face. Snow lashed her cheeks as she crashed through the undergrowth, adrenaline surging. She followed the sound of frantic hooves until she burst into a small clearing. There Aspen stood, nostrils flaring, mane wild, pawing anxiously at the base of a hollowed-out tree. Willow circled, eyes wide, nostrils twitching. Jessica's gaze darted to where Aspen's front hoof scraped at something half-buried in the snow. For a moment, the world shrank to that single, shivering spot. Jessica staggered closer, her fingers already numb as she knelt in the snow. She blinked, not trusting her eyes. There, nestled in a nest of torn blanket, was a newborn baby, barely larger than a loaf of bread, its skin blue with cold, breaths so shallow she feared she was too late. Jessica's throat closed, her mind whirled. Was this real? Was she dreaming? No. There was no mistaking the infant's tiny hand, curled in on itself, the face screwed up in a silent, desperate plea. Her own hands shook as she reached out, terrified she'd hurt the child just by touching it. The cold felt sharper than any blade. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus, recalling old training, moments in the field. Check for life. Check for breathing. She pressed trembling fingers to the baby's chest, so fragile, almost not daring to hope. For a breathless second, nothing. Then, a flutter, the faintest rise and fall, a single gasping inhale. Jessica's tears stung her eyes, threatening to freeze on her cheeks. She scooped the baby into her arms, wrapping it in her own jacket, pulling it as close to her body as she could. The infant was impossibly light, terrifyingly still, her breath fogged around them both. "You're okay. You're okay. Hold on, please," her voice cracked. Aspen stayed pressed close, nuzzling Jessica's shoulder, the horse's body tense, ready to defend against any threat. Willow stood back, trembling but watching, drawn to the tiny bundle. Jessica knew she had only moments to act. The night was dropping colder by the minute. She rose, legs barely steady, clutching the child, her boots slipping on the icy ground. Her mind raced. She needed warmth, help, a hospital, fast. She glanced at Aspen, her faithful companion. "Come on, girl. We have to run." Aspen moved to her side immediately, and Willow fell in behind, the little filly's eyes fixed on the bundle in Jessica's arms. Jessica stumbled back toward the trail, the wind cutting harder now, her muscles screaming, lungs burning. Each step felt like she was moving through quicksand. But she pressed on, whispering encouragement to the infant, to herself, to the horses. Her heart hammered, matching the frantic drumbeat of hooves on snow. Every few yards, Jessica looked down. The baby's tiny hand moved once, curled weakly around her finger. That touch, a spark of life, a plea she couldn't ignore. They reached the trail at last. Jessica hurried the horses onward, mind reeling, questions swirling. Who would abandon a newborn here? Why? How long had the child been exposed to this deadly cold? She forced the thoughts away, focusing on survival. No time for doubt. No time for fear. Not tonight. As the lights of her old pickup truck finally glimmered through the trees, Jessica nearly collapsed in relief. Aspen snorted. Willow let out a shaky whinny, but all Jessica could do was clutch the child tighter, promising silently, "Not this time. I won't fail again." Behind them, the lonely pine forest stood silent, snow falling in heavy, quiet flakes, as if the world itself was watching and waiting, wondering what would happen next. Jessica's hands trembled as she placed the fragile newborn onto the passenger seat of her battered Ford pickup. The old truck sat beneath a crust of snow, headlights flickering as she fumbled for the keys with numb fingers. Aspen stood close, her body tense and eyes fixed on Jessica, while Willow pranced in anxious little circles, her breaths coming out in frantic puffs. The world felt hushed. No birds, no wind, only the steady, desperate thump of Jessica's own heart. "Please hang on. Don't go to sleep, little one," Jessica whispered, voice cracking as she wrapped the baby in every spare blanket she could find from the emergency kit behind her seat. The engine coughed, then roared to life. She glanced back. Aspen had pushed her head through the open window, nostrils flaring, and gave a low, worried whicker. Jessica hesitated for just a second, torn between the drive and the horses. She turned, voice steady but urgent. "Stay close, Aspen. Don't let Willow run off. I'll be back, I promise." She slammed the door and sped down the icy forest road, the tires skidding on hard-packed snow. The baby let out a faint, shivering cry. Jessica reached across, one hand gripping the wheel, the other touching the baby's cheek. She could feel the cold radiating through the bundle. "Stay with me. Talk to me, sweetheart. You're not alone, not tonight." She tried to keep her voice steady, recalling the soothing words she'd used on traumatized animals. Soft, rhythmic, never panicked. The headlights carved tunnels of light through the darkness, every mile a test of her control. The roads were slick, black ice waiting in the bends, and the forest pressed in on both sides, a wall of shadows. Jessica's mind spun, her own memories surging up, unbidden. She remembered the feeling of abandonment in a cold, gray foster home, the sting of being left behind, the hunger for a gentle touch. She remembered swearing she'd never let another soul feel that kind of loneliness. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. No time to answer. Not while weaving through the treacherous roads. The baby's breathing grew ragged, and panic clawed at Jessica's chest. She forced herself to focus, singing softly, an old lullaby her mother once hummed before everything went wrong. "Hush now, don't you cry. Mama's here by your side." As the town lights of Flagstaff blinked on the horizon, Jessica pressed harder on the gas. She could see the bright blue sign for the Flagstaff Medical Center glowing ahead. She pulled into the emergency drive, tires squealing, slamming to a stop just inches from the sliding doors. She leapt out, cradling the baby to her chest, her boots slipping on the ice. A nurse rushed out, eyes wide at the sight of Jessica's wild face and the limp child bundled in her arms. "Help! Please, he's freezing!" Jessica shouted, breath pluming as she ran forward. The doors hissed open, swallowing her in a flurry of motion. Inside, warmth hit her like a wave, too bright, too sudden, making her dizzy. Doctors and nurses surged around her. One, a woman with tired eyes and a badge that read Monica Reyes, took the baby with a gentleness that almost broke Jessica's heart. Monica's face was drawn, but her hands were steady. "We've got you, sweetheart. Let's get him warm," she said, voice steady, and disappeared into the chaos beyond. Jessica stumbled, her adrenaline spent, hands shaking uncontrollably. Aspen and Willow were nowhere in sight now, left outside, waiting, worrying. Jessica pressed herself against the cold glass of the ER entrance, trying to watch as the team worked on the child. Monica glanced back, caught Jessica's gaze, and offered a small, silent nod. "Trust me." Time lost all meaning. Jessica couldn't breathe, couldn't sit still, couldn't think of anything but the tiny bundle and the fear of another failure. Flashes from her past haunted her, her own cries echoing in empty rooms, waiting for someone who never came. She pressed her hand to the glass, whispering, "Don't let this be the end for him, not tonight." Suddenly, Monica burst through the doors, face grim but determined. "We're working on him. He's critical, but he's fighting." "What's his name?" Monica asked. Jessica shook her head, tears stinging her cheeks. I don't know. I just found him." Monica squeezed her shoulder. "That's all right. He's safe now. We'll take it from here." For a moment, Jessica saw something in Monica's eyes, a private sorrow, a wound barely healed. But there was hope too, a flicker that refused to be extinguished. Outside, Jessica spotted Aspen's head silhouetted against the hospital lights. The mare stood tall and unmoving, her breath forming clouds in the frosty night, eyes fixed on the door. Willow pressed close, as if drawing courage from Aspen's unshakable calm. Jessica stepped out for a moment, rubbing her face with stiff hands, drawing strength from the sight of her horses. She stroked Aspen's muzzle, feeling the familiar, steady heartbeat beneath warm fur. "You saved him, girl. You really did." Inside, the minutes crawled by. Doctors rushed in and out. Monica returned, face softer now. "He's still with us. His temperature's up a degree, but it's touch and go." She offered Jessica a seat. Jessica collapsed, head in her hands, letting herself hope. The ER's harsh fluorescent lights flickered, but for a moment, there was a fragile peace. Monica worked beside the doctors, her presence calming everyone. Jessica realized this wasn't just another rescue. She was surrounded by people who cared, who fought, who believed. A gentle hand squeezed Jessica's arm. Monica, voice low, said, "You did everything right. Sometimes that's enough to change a life." Jessica nodded, unable to speak. Her whole world now centered on a tiny, unnamed baby fighting for his future in the warmth of the hospital lights. And as the storm raged outside, Jessica made a silent vow. This was not where the story would end. Not for the baby, not for her, not for anyone lost in the cold. The first fingers of dawn crept through the high hospital windows, tinting everything a soft blue as night slowly released its hold. Jessica stood silently behind the thick glass of the neonatal unit, arms wrapped tightly around herself, eyes fixed on the tiny bundle surrounded by wires and softly beeping machines. Every inch of the sterile room screamed of urgency and fragility. The faint hum of heaters, the rhythmic blip of a heart monitor, the quiet murmur of nurses trading shifts. The world felt suspended, hovering somewhere between despair and hope. Inside the clear incubator, the baby, now called Eli by the staff, fought with every shallow breath. His cheeks were a little less blue now, but his eyelids fluttered weakly. Jessica pressed her palm against the cold glass, willing warmth into him with every ounce of strength she had. Her own cap, wool and faded from years of use, rested near Eli's head, a small, strange token of comfort amid the machines. Across the parking lot, Aspen paced just outside the big glass doors, her silhouette framed by the early morning light. She refused to move, nostrils flaring with every anxious exhale, ears pricked toward the building as if she understood that something precious was happening inside. Willow huddled close to Aspen's side, sometimes resting her muzzle against the older mare's neck, both horses united in silent vigil. Jessica's mind spun, stuck in a loop of guilt and hope. The sight of Eli so helpless pierced her. She was used to rescuing wild creatures from traps, sometimes even calming desperate hikers. But this was different. This was a life so new, so raw, it didn't even have a past yet. She remembered the cold sting of failure, her old partner, a lost boy in the woods, the child she couldn't save despite her frantic search through blinding snow. That night still woke her in sweats, and now, faced with Eli's fight for survival, all those wounds felt open again. Nurse Monica Reyes sat by Eli's side, her hands steady, her voice barely above a whisper as she sang an old Spanish lullaby. Monica's eyes were rimmed red, not just from exhaustion, but from some deeper ache. The staff had learned her story in whispers, her own little girl lost to illness not 6 months before. She stroked Eli's tiny hand, tears slipping silently down her cheek, her voice never faltering. For a moment, Jessica saw Monica's pain and her strength, felt them mingling in the song, in the room, in the thin thread of hope binding everyone together. A doctor came over, his face grave but gentle. He's stabilized for now. We'll watch his temperature, watch for signs of infection. It's minute by minute, but he's a fighter. Jessica nodded, her eyes still on Eli. He has to be, she whispered, her breath fogging the glass. Outside, Aspen let out a deep, shuddering whinny that echoed faintly in the quiet parking lot. Jessica couldn't help but smile, just a little, hearing it. She thought about how Aspen had found Eli, how the mare had pawed at the snow and refused to leave. That kind of loyalty was something she'd never found in people, not even her own family. The bond between them was forged by survival, by rescue, by the understanding that some scars can't be seen. As the morning wore on, the hospital's chaos faded to a hush. Monica sat with Jessica by the big window, the two women united by grief and hope. Monica handed Jessica a cup of coffee, still hot, her hands lingering a moment too long. He's strong. Sometimes that's all you need, Monica said. Jessica nodded, voice soft. I don't want to be the one who stands by and does nothing. Not this time. Monica looked at her, seeing through all the layers of defense, and said, You already changed his fate. Sometimes being there is enough. Back inside, Eli stirred, his fist closing around a scrap of Jessica's cap. Monica smiled. He knows you're here. Babies remember touch. They remember care. Jessica watched as Monica leaned over, singing again, her song carrying the hope and sorrow of the room. Willow, always skittish, suddenly pressed her muzzle to the glass of the ER doors. Aspen nickered softly, standing sentry. Jessica felt their presence in her bones. She owed them. And now Eli owed them too. She stepped outside for a moment, letting the cold morning air bite her skin. She stroked Aspen's neck, breathing in the smell of horse and pine and snow. "Thank you, girl. I couldn't have done it without you," she murmured. And Aspen nudged her with gentle insistence, as if to say, "We did what needed to be done." Inside, time moved strangely, at once racing and crawling. Doctors rotated, checking charts, adjusting tubes. Jessica sat through it all, never taking her eyes off Eli. At one point, she watched Monica slip a tiny knitted horse into Eli's blanket. A small symbol of luck, or maybe just a reminder that he was not alone. Afternoon sunlight finally spilled through the window, casting a golden glow over the neonatal unit. A hush fell as the doctor returned. "His temperature's holding steady. It's too early to celebrate, but this is a good sign." Jessica felt tears gather, but this time they came with relief. For the first time, she let herself breathe. Monica, tired but hopeful, looked at Jessica. "You gave him a chance. Whatever happens next, he's not alone anymore." Jessica watched Eli, so small and fragile, yet fighting. She looked out at Aspen and Willow, her unlikely companions, and realized that sometimes family found you in the most unexpected ways. As evening crept in, the room held a quiet unity, a fragile hope shared between strangers. Jessica sat back, exhausted, her heart a little lighter. In the silence, Eli's tiny hand curled around the knitted horse, a symbol of the night that changed everything. And for the first time in years, Jessica felt that maybe, just maybe, she was finally more than a bystander. She was a protector, a witness, a lifeline. And in that small, warm hospital room, hope flickered to life. The sky had barely shifted from midnight blue to the weak gray of dawn when Jessica found herself standing outside the hospital, the cold cutting sharper now that adrenaline had worn off. She pressed a palm to Aspen's flank, feeling the big mare's warmth soak into her numb fingers. Willow, always restless, stamped at the crusted snow, sending little puffs of powder swirling around her hooves. Inside, Eli clung to life, surrounded by the best care the small hospital could muster. Jessica had learned that even in moments of crisis, there came a lull, a hush where nothing could be done but wait. Yet the waiting made Jessica's thoughts circle and bite. Where was this baby's mother? What had driven her to abandon her newborn on a frozen night, deep in the woods, so far from help? Jessica closed her eyes, trying to clear her mind. She pictured Aspen's frantic digging, the baby's blue lips, the ragged swaddle. There was something unfinished here, some story just beneath the surface. Aspen nickered softly, as if agreeing. Determined, Jessica led the horses back into the snowy woods at the edge of Flagstaff, retracing her steps from the night before. The ground was a frozen puzzle, hoofprints, her own boot marks, and something fainter. She squatted, brushing away snow until she found a smaller print, too small to be a man's, too deep for a child. It was a woman's, and next to it, the faint imprint of something dragged, a suitcase or a heavy bag. Jessica's breath clouded in the air as she led Aspen and Willow deeper along the trail, following the subtle signs. Broken twigs, a lost mitten, a smear of formula powder on a log. Each clue painted a picture, someone running, someone desperate, someone at the end of her rope. Eventually, the tracks led to an abandoned shed, crouched beneath the tangled arms of a dead pine. The padlock had been snapped. Jessica pushed open the door, letting weak daylight slant across the empty interior. Her pulse quickened. Inside, she found a cracked baby bottle, still sticky with sour milk, and a battered child's toy horse, its mane worn thin by years of clutching fingers. A note, folded and smeared, sat atop the old feed barrel. Jessica's hands shook as she read it, her breath catching at the first line. "Forgive me, Maple, keep him safe. I have nothing left." She swallowed hard, glancing back at Aspen. The mare's ears twitched at the sound of her old name, Maple, and she stamped her hoof, uneasy but attentive. Jessica crouched down, her heart racing. The story had just shifted. This wasn't a callous abandonment. It was a mother's final, desperate hope. Whoever she was, she'd trusted her horse, trusted Maple to save her child when she herself could not. A sudden flood of memories struck Jessica. Her own mother's last night. The hurried words. The sense of helplessness that had followed her for decades. She blinked hard, pushing the thoughts away. Now wasn't the time to wallow in her own grief. Someone out there was suffering, perhaps as much as she once had. She snapped a few photos of the note and the shed's contents, planning to give them to the police. But deep down, she knew this was her mission now. Aspen seemed to sense it too. The mare lowered her head, nostrils flaring as she sniffed around the feed barrel, following a scent only she could truly decipher. Jessica led the horses out into the thin sunlight. She checked her phone, no missed calls, but a text from Monica lit up the screen. "Eli is stable. Thinking of you? Be careful out there." Jessica typed back, "Thank you. I think I found something. I'll call if I get a lead." Back at the hospital, Monica sat at Eli's side, singing gently, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion and pain. She watched the baby sleep, saw his fingers curl around the toy horse Jessica had left, and felt her own grief ease just a little. When Jessica called and relayed what she'd found, Monica listened quietly, then said, "You're getting closer. Don't give up. That woman's not a monster, just lost." Jessica wandered back into town, her mind whirling with possibilities. She stopped at a coffee shop for warmth and heard the early morning radio crackle with the first reports of a foundling at the hospital. Whispers swept the town. A baby found in the woods. A mystery mother. The echo of tragedy and hope. As she sipped bitter coffee, Jessica's thoughts tangled with memory and fear. What if the mother had tried to return? What if she'd been watching, unable to reach out? She pictured a gaunt woman, coat wrapped tight, walking alone through the freezing night, searching for something she could never reclaim. Aspen, still keyed up, tugged at her lead. Jessica followed the mare's gaze across the street, to the empty bus stop at the town's edge, a place where drifters gathered before moving on. Snow was freshly disturbed beneath the bench, a faint imprint of someone sitting there long after midnight. Aspen whinnied, tail flicking anxiously. Jessica pressed her palm to Aspen's neck. "Did she come here, girl? Did she wait for someone?" The mare stamped, eyes bright, as if urging Jessica to trust her instincts. Jessica resolved to follow whatever trail Aspen could find, no matter how faint. As the sun climbed higher, the town stirred awake, rumors thickening like the morning fog. Jessica's gut twisted with urgency. Time was running out for the mother, alone, afraid, guilt-ridden, and possibly in danger herself. Aspen's loyalty was unbreakable, and Jessica felt a surge of hope. If she could find the mother, maybe she could offer something more powerful than rescue. Maybe she could offer forgiveness. With renewed determination, Jessica let Aspen lead the way, tracking invisible memories through snow and silence. For the first time, Jessica believed that the answers, about the mother, about herself, might be just ahead, waiting to be found in the thawing light of day. The sky was heavy with low, gray clouds as Jessica made her way toward the truck stop just off the old highway. Her breath plumed in the morning chill, boots crunching in fresh snow. Aspen moved beside her, head low but eyes sharp, every sense tuned for signs of the missing woman. Willow, still jittery but braver in Aspen's presence, trailed behind, glancing nervously at the passing traffic. Jessica's mind was racing. She kept replaying the words from the note. "Forgive me, Maple, keep him safe. I have nothing left." Inside the truck stop, the air was thick with the smell of coffee and diesel. Truckers huddled at the counter, speaking in low voices. Jessica's ranger jacket drew glances, some curious, some wary. She approached the counter, steeling herself. "Morning. I'm looking for someone. A woman, thin, maybe in her 30s, traveling with a brown horse. Anyone seen her around here last night?" A pause. The cashier, a heavy-set man with a ginger beard, squinted at her. "You mean the one with the wild eyes? Came in a couple times the past week. Bought formula, diapers, just the basics. She didn't say much." He lowered his voice, glancing sideways at a grizzled old trucker at the end of the counter. "There was trouble last night. Some jerk hassled her in the parking lot. She left fast. Seemed scared out of her mind." Jessica's chest tightened. "What did the guy look like?" The man hesitated, rubbing his beard. Tall, mean, always wore a ball cap low over his eyes. Never liked the way he looked at folks. He jerked his chin toward the security cameras above the counter. "You can check the footage. I'll buzz the manager." Minutes later, Jessica sat in a cramped office, watching grainy footage on a flickering screen. There, just past midnight, a thin woman bundled in a patched coat, holding the hand of a little boy and leading Aspen, then Maple, by the reins. The woman looked over her shoulder, flinching at something out of frame. Seconds later, a man stepped into view, shoulders hunched, face hidden by shadow. He said something. Jessica couldn't hear the words, but she saw the woman's body language tense, her arm coming up defensively. The man advanced, but the brown mare stepped between them, ears flat, a clear warning. Jessica's heart pounded. Aspen had protected the woman before. Just as she had protected Eli, she fast-forwarded the footage. The woman disappeared into the darkness, leading Aspen away, the man watching after her, his face twisted with something dark. Jessica felt anger spark inside her, a memory of hands raised, voices shouting, nights when she herself had cowered in corners as a child. The world hadn't changed much for women who found themselves alone and afraid. Back outside, Aspen tossed her head, catching Jessica's mood. The mare pawed at a patch of dirty snow by the curb, nostrils flaring. Willow danced beside her, ears flicking anxiously. Jessica crouched, noticing a small, faded pacifier buried in the slush. She picked it up, brushing it off, another breadcrumb in the trail. She closed her fist around it, jaw clenched. She asked around the lot, her voice growing sharper with each "haven't seen her," each shrug. But finally, a young woman emptying trash behind the diner paused. "You mean the lady with the horse?" "Yeah, I saw her. She was heading toward the woods by Walnut Canyon, carrying a baby. Looked scared, like someone was after her." A jolt of adrenaline shot through Jessica. She thanked the woman, then hurried back to Aspen, mounting up with practiced ease. "Let's go, girl. She's out there." Willow followed, drawn along by Aspen's certainty. They rode hard toward Walnut Canyon, snow kicking up behind them, the landscape growing wilder and more silent with every passing mile. Jessica kept her eyes peeled for tracks, finally spotting a set of narrow footprints, boot heels dragging, horse hooves stamping alongside. The trail zigzagged between boulders, through clumps of juniper and the twisted skeletons of ancient pines. A piece of a torn scarf fluttered from a branch. Jessica took it, heart pounding, tucking it into her pocket as another clue. Halfway up the canyon's edge, Aspen stopped abruptly, ears swiveling. Jessica slid off and followed her gaze. Far below, near a frozen creek, a tangle of blue tarp and faded blankets signaled a makeshift campsite. Smoke curled from a tiny fire. Jessica's heart leapt. She motioned for Willow to stay put, then crept closer, Aspen right beside her. From behind a tree, Jessica saw a woman, hair matted, eyes hollow with exhaustion, rocking back and forth by the embers. Her arms cradled something, but the bundle was too small to be Eli. It was a faded sweater pressed to her chest as if it could fill the void. Nearby, an empty formula bottle lay half buried in snow. The woman muttered to herself, shivering violently. Jessica recognized her from the footage. Rachel Bennett. She was gaunt, her lips cracked, her skin a ghostly gray. Jessica stepped forward, boots crunching the snow. The woman looked up, terror flashing in her eyes. She tried to scramble away, but Aspen blocked her path, lowering her head gently. "It's okay," Jessica said, her voice as calm as she could manage. "I'm here to help. Your baby. He's alive. He's safe." The woman's hands shook, tears spilling down her cheeks. She collapsed beside Aspen, burying her face in the mare's mane. For a moment, she just wept, clutching at fur and mane as if it were the only thing tethering her to the earth. Jessica knelt, wrapping her own coat around Rachel's thin shoulders. "You did what you had to. Let's get you warm. Let's get you back to your son." Rachel looked up, eyes wide with disbelief and hope all tangled together. "You promise he's alive?" Jessica nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "He's waiting for you, and you're not alone anymore." Somewhere above them, snow began to fall again, soft and steady, blanketing the old pain, the fear, and the desperate hope of two women, and one unbreakable horse. Jessica's boots sank into the powdery snow as she guided Rachel, shivering and weak, back along the icy trail. Aspen pressed close, her presence a steady anchor, while Willow kept her distance, circling nervously in the trees. The cold felt sharper than ever, stinging Jessica's face and numbing her hands, but adrenaline kept her focused on the fragile woman by her side. Rachel stumbled, catching herself against Aspen's broad shoulder. I can't go any farther," she gasped, her voice a thin thread, almost lost in the wind. Jessica caught her, wrapping her arm around Rachel's bony shoulders, determined not to let her fall. "We're almost there," Jessica murmured, her voice steady, trying to hide her own fear. "You're safe now. Just a little farther." Aspen nickered softly, her breath steaming in the air, as if encouraging Rachel forward. Rachel's hand twisted into the mare's mane, clinging as if it was the only thing holding her together. It took nearly an hour to retrace their steps to Jessica's truck. By the time they arrived, Rachel was barely conscious, her lips blue, her hands shaking violently. Jessica helped her into the cab, layering every spare blanket over her shoulders. Aspen and Willow stood sentinel outside, watching with wide, worried eyes. As Jessica turned the key, the truck's engine roared to life, heat blasting into the freezing cab. Rachel slumped against the seat, her face hollow. "You said, my baby, he's alive." Jessica nodded, glancing at her with a mix of relief and sadness. "He's at the hospital. He's fighting, but he's alive. We have to get you there now." The drive back was tense. Rachel's head lolled against the window, her eyes flickering open and closed. She muttered broken phrases, lost in fever dreams. Jessica gripped the wheel, forcing herself to keep calm. She kept talking, kept Rachel awake, telling her about Aspen, about Willow, about the baby boy the hospital staff called Eli. Rachel's breathing quickened. "They'll take him from me. They'll never let me see him." Jessica shook her head, voice gentle but firm. You did what you had to do. You tried to save him. No one's here to judge you, Rachel. We're just trying to help. Rachel squeezed her eyes shut, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. I was so scared. I thought if I left him there, someone would find him. Maple would protect him. She always did. She always kept us safe. Jessica swallowed hard. Aspen, once Maple, was more than just a horse. She'd been Rachel's companion through years of isolation and fear, the only constant in a world that had turned hostile. Jessica glanced out the window at the mare, now trotting alongside the truck as if she sensed the importance of this journey. The hospital finally came into view, harsh white lights against the gloom, a beacon for the lost. Jessica parked by the ER entrance, rushing inside to get help. Nurses appeared, wheeling a shivering, barely conscious Rachel into the warmth and safety of the building. Aspen and Willow waited outside, their breaths mingling in the frosty air, eyes locked on the doors. Inside, the sterile corridors felt oddly comforting. Jessica followed as Rachel was admitted, her own heart pounding in her chest. Monica met her at the nurse's station, her face drawn but hopeful. We'll get her checked. Eli's holding on. He's stronger than any of us thought. Jessica let out a long, shaking breath, exhaustion finally catching up to her. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment, listening to the distant hum of machines, the soft murmurs of hospital staff. Hours passed in a blur of paperwork, questions, and hurried medical care. Rachel drifted in and out of sleep, her dreams haunted by the past. When she finally awoke, Jessica sat by her bed, Aspen visible through the window, Willow pressed close for comfort. Rachel reached for Jessica's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Thank you for not judging me, for not giving up on us. Jessica squeezed back. You did what you had to do to survive. No one can take that away from you. Your son is alive because of you, and because Aspen never stopped believing in you. Rachel's breath caught. She saved me, you know. Back when things got bad, she'd stand between me and him. She took the blows. She kept me from running away forever. Jessica nodded. Sometimes animals are the only ones who understand. A nurse peeked in, a gentle smile on her face. Are you ready to see him? Rachel's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, her voice barely more than a whisper. Please. They wheeled Rachel down the corridor, Jessica walking beside her. At the end of the hall, Monica waited by the neonatal unit. She opened the door, her face glowing with anticipation. Inside, Eli slept, his little fists curled against his chest, his color so much better now. Rachel broke down, silent sobs racking her frail body. She reached out, trembling fingers brushing Eli's cheek. Monica placed a hand on her shoulder, tears in her own eyes. He's been waiting for you. Jessica stood back, watching as mother and child were finally reunited. For the first time in days, a sense of peace settled in the room, fragile but real. Aspen nickered from outside, her breath frosting the glass as she watched over them all. Rachel looked up, gratitude and heartbreak mingling in her eyes. I thought I'd lost everything. But you brought us home. Jessica smiled, her own eyes shining. You're not alone anymore. We're here, all of us. And as the first rays of morning light spilled through the hospital window, the world felt, if only for a moment, whole again. In the gentle hush of the hospital room, sunlight filtered through slatted blinds, painting golden stripes across the foot of Rachel's bed. Jessica stood just inside the door, watching as Monica guided Rachel's wheelchair to the clear plastic crib where Eli slept. Aspen and Willow waited outside the hospital window, their patient faces peering in, nostrils fogging the glass. Rachel's hands shook as she reached for her son. For a long moment, she hovered, afraid to touch him, as if the tiniest movement would shatter the fragile peace that had settled over them all. Jessica stepped closer, placing a steadying hand on Rachel's shoulder. "He's here, Rachel. He's real. You can hold him now." A shaky sob escaped Rachel's lips as her trembling fingers brushed Eli's soft cheek. His eyes fluttered open, and for the first time since that terrible night, he stared up at his mother, silent and curious. Rachel scooped him into her arms, pressing her face to his tiny head, breathing him in. "My sweet boy. My Eli," she whispered. The words muffled by a rush of tears, Monica looked on, a soft smile breaking through her own exhaustion. For weeks, she had carried the weight of her own grief, but now, as she watched mother and child reunite, something inside her began to heal. Jessica, too, felt the knot of tension in her chest slowly unraveling. This was the moment she had fought for, the moment every sleepless night, every desperate search, every old pain finally made sense. Outside, Aspen let out a deep, contented nicker, as if she could sense the reunion. Willow pressed her nose against the glass, ears flicking. Hospital staff walking by paused to smile at the scene, the wild horses watching over the fragile family, the sense of hope that clung to the room. As Rachel rocked Eli, murmuring apologies and love in equal measure, Jessica caught Monica's eye. "How is he?" she asked, voice hushed. Monica's answer was gentle. "He's still small, still vulnerable, but he's strong. I've never seen a baby fight this hard, not after everything he's been through." She glanced at Rachel, her tone kind but direct. "The doctors ran some tests while you were resting. They did a DNA swab. There's no doubt. Eli is your son. No one can take that from you." Relief crashed over Rachel like a wave. "Thank you. Thank you for believing in me. I thought they'd never let me see him again." Jessica squeezed Rachel's shoulder. "They just needed to know he was safe, that you were safe. You're together now, and that's what matters." But the room's peace was short-lived. Within an hour, a social worker from Child Protective Services entered, clipboard in hand, her expression professional but wary. "Miss Bennett, Miss Miller," she said, nodding at both women. "I need to discuss Eli's future. Given the circumstances, his abandonment, your own health, we'll need to make a decision about custody." Rachel's face crumpled, panic flaring in her eyes. "No, please. I just got him back. I didn't leave him because I wanted to. I was scared. I had no other choice." Jessica stood, her posture fierce. "You don't know what she's been through. She did everything she could to keep him safe. If it weren't for her and Aspen, he wouldn't be here at all." Monica joined them, standing at Rachel's side. "You can't separate them now, not after everything they've survived." The social worker pursed her lips, making notes on her clipboard. "The law is clear. We have to ensure Eli's safety. There will be a hearing, and we'll need statements from both of you, as well as any witnesses. Miss Bennett, do you have anyone who can support your case?" Rachel shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No one. I don't have anyone left." Jessica exchanged a look with Monica, both women silent for a moment. Then Jessica said, "You have us. I'll testify. Monica will too. And Aspen. Aspen's loyalty is proof enough for anyone willing to see it." Word of Rachel's story spread quickly through the hospital. Nurses who had cared for Eli spoke up, describing how he calmed in his mother's arms, how Aspen, waiting outside, had never left their side. Monica gathered statements from staff, painting a picture not of neglect, but of desperate, resourceful love. At the custody hearing 2 days later, Rachel sat beside Jessica and Monica, hands clasped tight in her lap. The judge listened to every word, every tearful account, every heartfelt plea. Aspen and Willow waited outside the courthouse, drawing curious crowds and soft smiles from passers-by. Jessica took the stand first. Her voice was strong, her story clear. Rachel Bennett did not abandon her child. She entrusted him to her only friend, her horse, when she had nothing left. She risked everything for Eli. She's not a danger. She's a mother who never stopped fighting, even when she had no hope left. Monica spoke next, describing Rachel's devotion, her courage, the unbreakable bond between mother and son. Eli is safe because of his mother, and because of the family she built from nothing. Even the social worker was moved by the outpouring of support. When the judge finally rendered her decision, her voice was gentle. This is an unusual case, but it's clear that Rachel Bennett acted out of desperation, not malice. Eli will remain in her care, under the supervision of Child Protective Services, with support from Miss Miller and Miss Reyes. This family deserves a chance. Relief rippled through the courtroom. Rachel broke down, clinging to Jessica and Monica. Eli slept peacefully in his mother's arms, unaware of how close he had come to losing everything. That evening, as Rachel settled into the hospital room with Eli, Aspen and Willow pressed close to the window. Rachel looked out at her old friend, whispering thanks only the horses could hear. Jessica stood by her side, Monica at her other shoulder. "You did it," Jessica said quietly. "You brought him home." Rachel smiled through her tears, hope shining in her eyes for the first time in years. "No, I didn't do it alone. I had you. I had Aspen. I had a miracle." And as dusk settled over Flagstaff, the fragile family, bound by love, by loyalty, by forgiveness, began to imagine a future they'd never thought possible. Winter loosened its grip on Flagstaff, and slush replaced snow along the edges of the woods. In a tiny rental at the town's edge, Rachel woke to the unfamiliar warmth of hope. The cottage was nothing fancy, a single bedroom, a living area crowded by thrift store furniture, and windows patched against the wind. But it was the first home Rachel could remember that didn't carry the scent of fear. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window as Eli squealed in his high chair, flinging oatmeal with abandon. Rachel laughed, her voice still unused to joy, and wiped his face with a soft rag. On most mornings, Jessica would drop by with Aspen and Willow. Eli's delighted shrieks echoed down the block as he toddled toward the horses. Aspen dipped her great head low, letting him braid her mane with colorful scraps of yarn, her gentle eyes softening with every touch. Willow, still cautious, watched from behind, but she let Rachel stroke her neck sometimes too. Jessica brought groceries, checked on the heater, and always stayed for coffee. "You're doing amazing, Rachel," she'd say, watching Rachel cradle Eli in the morning light. "He's thriving." But rebuilding a life wasn't just moments of peace. Every night, when the house fell quiet and Eli's breathing was the only sound, Rachel's doubts came crawling back. Could she really do this alone? Did she even deserve to? She'd wake in the dark, gasping, hand clutching the old toy horse Monica had given Eli in the hospital, a reminder that there were people who cared. She'd creep to Eli's crib, heart pounding, just to be sure he was still there. Jessica understood. She would sit with Rachel after Eli was asleep, their conversations dipping into old pain. "You know," Jessica confided one evening, hands wrapped around a chipped mug, "I used to think trauma was a shadow you could outrun. But you can't. You just have to let people walk with you through it." Sometimes that's enough." Rachel nodded, letting the comfort settle over her. Still, the fear sometimes twisted in her gut, especially when the phone rang late or a strange car idled too long at the curb. It was Jessica who noticed Rachel's hand tremble one afternoon as she sifted through the mail. "What is it?" Rachel handed her a torn envelope. Inside was a single slip of paper, the handwriting jagged and familiar. "You think you're safe? I know where you are. I always find you." Jessica's face darkened. She recognized the threat for what it was. Rachel's abuser had found them, even here. Jessica called Monica, and together they formed a circle of protection around Rachel and Eli. Monica reached out to her contacts at the local police, and patrols became a regular sight on Rachel's street. Aspen and Willow took up their posts by the backyard fence, heads swinging alertly whenever a stranger approached. Rachel felt the old fear rise. Her hands shook, her dreams filled with shadows. But something inside her had changed. One evening, as Eli giggled on Aspen's back, Rachel pressed her cheek against the mare's shoulder. "I'm not running this time," she whispered. "I'm not alone anymore." Rachel found solace in routine. Every morning she bundled Eli into his patched stroller and walked to the nearby stables, where Jessica had helped her find work. Mucking stalls and grooming horses gave her hands something to do, her mind a rhythm to follow. The stable owner, a wiry woman named Ruth, welcomed Rachel with gruff kindness. "You show up on time, you work hard, you get paid, no questions asked." Rachel's confidence grew. She learned to trust again, first Ruth, then the other stable hands. Eli became a fixture at the barn, riding on Rachel's hip, giggling as Willow nuzzled his curls. Aspen became the barn's unofficial mascot, her gentle presence drawing out even the most stubborn foals. The horses taught Rachel to breathe again, to stand tall, even when she wanted to shrink away. Jessica and Monica checked in constantly, sometimes bringing a hot meal or an armful of books for Eli. Monica's own grief had softened, replaced by a fierce protectiveness. She and Jessica became Rachel's chosen family, her safety net, her sounding board, her friends. The town, too, began to accept Rachel and Eli. The whispers faded. The local grocer slipped Rachel free fruit for Eli, and neighbors stopped by with casseroles and warm coats. It wasn't charity. It was community. For the first time, Rachel felt seen not as a victim, but as a mother, a worker, a neighbor. But the threats didn't stop. Rachel found another note tucked under the windshield of her borrowed car. This time, she didn't hide it. She brought it straight to Jessica, who marched it to the police with Monica at her side. That evening, Jessica stayed until midnight, sitting on Rachel's porch with a flashlight and Aspen at her side. Monica took the early morning shift, bringing coffee and reassurance. One night, after a particularly bad dream, Rachel found herself outside in the moonlight, Aspen standing guard. She pressed her forehead to Aspen's, feeling the horse's warm breath. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for the protection, but for the silent understanding, the unspoken bond." Eli's laughter became the heartbeat of the house. On his first birthday, the backyard filled with neighbors, stable hands, and the few friends Rachel had dared to let into her world. Jessica grilled hot dogs, Monica brought a cake, and Aspen wore a crown of daisies braided into her mane. Eli shrieked with delight, smearing cake on Willow's nose. Rachel watched her son surrounded by safety, by love, by a future she had once thought impossible. But as dusk fell, a patrol car slowed by the house, headlights sweeping the lawn. Jessica stood beside Rachel, both women silent for a moment, feeling the weight of what they'd built and the dangers that still lingered. "We're ready," Jessica said quietly, meeting Rachel's eyes. Whatever comes next, we're not facing it alone. Rachel nodded, pulling Eli close, her heart pounding with fear and pride. For the first time in her life, she believed it. No matter what shadows might come, she had people and horses who would stand with her through the night. A heavy monsoon rain drummed steadily against the cottage windows as Rachel set the table for dinner. The scent of rosemary chicken filled the small space, mingling with the earthy aroma of wet pine drifting in through a cracked window. Eli toddled around Jessica's feet, clutching a toy horse, his giggles the perfect counterpoint to the storm's rumble. Aspen and Willow waited outside the back door, their bodies barely visible in the rain-soaked dusk, watching the warm scene unfold from the shelter of the porch awning. Monica arrived just as the last of the light faded, her hair damp from a dash through the downpour, arms full of groceries and a stack of children's books for Eli. She grinned at Jessica, hung her coat, and accepted a steaming mug of coffee. It felt, Rachel thought, almost like a real family, a gathering of survivors, each scarred but willing to share the table. They ate in the kitchen, laughter and small talk easing the tension that always seemed to hover at the edges of Rachel's mind. Ruth, the stable owner, had sent over a loaf of warm bread, and Monica told stories about her first disastrous years as a nurse. For a while, the room filled with the kind of peace Rachel had once believed impossible. After dinner, with Eli tucked in bed and the rain still beating down, the four women lingered over tea. Aspen pressed her nose to the window. Willow nuzzled her side, both horses a quiet, ever-present reminder of the bond that had saved them all. The conversation shifted from daily worries to deeper things, the kinds of stories that only surfaced when the world felt safe enough to hear them. Rachel turned the toy horse over in her hands, tracing the worn paint, her voice tentative. I know I should be grateful every day. I am. But sometimes I wake up still expecting it all to fall apart. Like I don't deserve to be safe. Like what happened before, what I did, what I survived. It's stuck inside me forever. Jessica met her eyes, her voice soft. I know that feeling. When you've been hurt, you start believing pain is what you're meant for. But that's a lie, Rachel. Aspen taught me that. She's seen her own share of cruelty. And yet, she still trusts, still protects. Rachel let her words settle in, eyes shining with unshed tears. You're right. Aspen saved me more than once, even when I didn't want to be saved. It was like she could see something in me I couldn't see myself. Monica leaned forward, her gaze gentle but intense. People who survive trauma often end up saving each other, whether they mean to or not. And sometimes, the ones who rescue us aren't people at all. They're animals, gestures, even a stranger's kindness. Rachel smiled, finally letting the tears spill over. I used to think rescue was a single act, a moment when someone steps in and pulls you out. But it's not. It's 1,000 little moments, a lifetime of choosing to keep trying, to keep loving, even when it hurts. Jessica nodded, reaching out to squeeze Rachel's hand. And forgiveness isn't something you get from others. It's what you give yourself. Eli has you, Rachel. He'll grow up knowing love, not fear. That's the real rescue. Monica glanced at the window, watching Aspen's silhouette. Animals like Aspen, they don't hold grudges. They just love. It's us humans who have to learn to do the same. Outside, the storm eased, rain giving way to the chirr of crickets. Rachel stood, stepping onto the porch, letting the damp air cool her cheeks. Aspen ambled over, resting her big head on Rachel's shoulder. Rachel stroked her mane, breathing in the horse's warm, earthy scent. Thank you, Maple, she whispered, using the mare's old name. You saved Eli. You saved me. Aspen nickered softly, a living reminder that hope endures. Back inside, Jessica and Monica watched through the window. Jessica spoke, her voice almost reverent. "I think Aspen's loyalty, her willingness to risk everything for Rachel and Eli, it's what held us all together. She's the reason any of us are here tonight." Monica nodded. "It's strange. I lost so much, and for a long time I thought my heart would never heal. But watching you, Rachel, fight your way back, being part of this circle, it's given me hope again." Rachel returned inside, her hair damp, but her face brighter. She sat with Jessica and Monica, sharing old stories and new dreams. For the first time, she voiced her guilt about leaving Eli in the woods. Jessica stopped her gently. "Rachel, you didn't abandon him. You made the hardest choice a mother can make. You trusted Aspen, and you trusted that the world would send help. And it did. You gave him a chance." Rachel let herself believe it. She looked around the kitchen at the women, her friends, her chosen family, and at the horses outside, steadfast and watchful. She realized rescue isn't about a single hero or one moment of bravery. It's about connection, about trusting and being trusted, about finding light in unexpected places. As the night deepened, Eli woke briefly, crying, so Rachel scooped him up, rocking him gently, her heart full. She caught her reflection in the window, stronger, steadier, no longer defined by fear. Jessica smiled at her. Monica placed a hand on her back. Aspen whinnied softly in the night. In that moment, Rachel finally understood. The scars she carried were not her shame, but her strength. Loyalty, forgiveness, and love. These were the true miracles that had rescued her. And she would spend the rest of her life making sure Eli knew that he, too, could always be saved, always find hope, no matter how dark the night. A year passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. In Flagstaff, the air was crisp with the promise of autumn as the annual Harvest Festival took over the town square. Orange leaves tumbled down the sidewalks, and the scent of fresh pies and cinnamon drifted through the crowds. On this bright afternoon, the heart of the festival was not the hay rides or the live band, but the parade of local heroes, their stories whispered in every corner of the crowd. At the edge of the festivities, Rachel stood by a wooden stage, Eli wriggling in her arms, his hair a halo of golden curls. Aspen and Willow, shining after a careful grooming at the stables, waited at their side, decorated with blue ribbons and garlands of wildflowers braided into their manes by half the children in town. Jessica adjusted Eli's jacket, her smile easy and proud. Monica stood beside her, laughter and warmth in her eyes. The mayor, flanked by town council members, stepped to the microphone. "This year, we're celebrating those who make our community stronger, not just by their strength, but by their courage, their compassion, and their belief in second chances. We are honored to recognize Rachel Bennett and her son Eli, whose story has touched us all, and of course the horses, Aspen and Willow, who remind us every day what loyalty truly looks like." The crowd erupted in applause. Rachel's cheeks flushed pink. A year ago, she would have shrunk from this attention, her spirit too bruised and wary. Now, she stepped onto the stage, Eli on her hip and Aspen's reins in her hand, facing the gathered faces with a trembling but determined smile. She took a breath, feeling the eyes of her new friends, her community, and her past life all upon her. "Last year," Rachel began, her voice clear but soft, "I was lost. I was afraid, and I didn't think there was a future for me or my son. But hope found me, in a horse's eyes, in the hands of strangers who refused to give up, and in the quiet acts of kindness from this town." She paused, glancing down at Eli, who giggled and waved at the crowd. Aspen nudged her gently, as if encouraging her to go on. I learned that family isn't always what you're born into, Rachel continued, her gaze resting on Jessica and Monica. Sometimes, it's the people who show up when you're at your lowest. The ones who fight for you, stand by you, and never let you forget that you're worth saving. I hope our story reminds you to look out for each other. You never know who needs a little hope or how much difference you can make just by caring. There were tears in more than a few eyes as Rachel stepped back, letting Jessica and Monica join her at the front. Monica spoke next, her words carrying through the crisp air. We are all broken at one time or another. But when we come together, when we trust, and when we give each other a chance to heal, there's nothing we can't overcome. The mayor presented Rachel with a certificate and announced a new community mentoring program, with Rachel as its first official mentor for at-risk families. Rachel blinked in disbelief. You want me to help others like me? She asked, her voice barely audible. Yes, said the mayor with a smile. Who better to guide others than someone who's lived it? Your strength is exactly what this town needs. Eli squealed as Jessica lifted him onto Aspen's back. The crowd cheered as the little boy rode tall, grinning and waving, Aspen steady beneath him, a living testament to resilience and trust. Willow trotted alongside, children hanging garlands around her neck, laughter rising like music. After the parade, the four women, Rachel, Jessica, Monica, and Ruth, gathered in the shade, their hearts light with pride and possibility. The horses grazed peacefully, Eli running in circles with a cluster of other children. For the first time, Rachel felt she belonged. She looked around at the faces, old neighbors, new friends, the people who had stepped up when she needed them most, and knew she was home. Jessica wrapped an arm around Rachel's shoulders, squeezing gently. You changed this town, you know. Rachel shook her head, smiling through tears. No, I just let people in. I let myself believe I was worth saving. Monica squeezed her hand, her own eyes shining. You taught all of us that. Even me. As the sun dipped low and lanterns flickered to life, Rachel found herself drawn to Aspen. She pressed her forehead to the mare's warm neck, whispering, "Thank you. For everything. For bringing me back when I was lost." Aspen nickered softly, her eyes shining in the lantern glow. Jessica stood beside them, quiet for a moment. Animals know things we never will, she said. They love without question, forgive without words. Aspen brought us together. She made this family. Eli tugged at Rachel's hand, his voice bright. Mama, can we stay forever? Rachel crouched beside him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. Yes, baby, we're not going anywhere. This is home. As laughter and music drifted through the night, Rachel understood at last. Their story wasn't about being saved by a hero. It was about finding connection in the coldest night, discovering family in unexpected places, and choosing hope even when everything seemed lost. The scars remained, visible and invisible, but they were no longer marks of shame. They were evidence of survival, reminders of every person and every animal who had stood by her side. When the festival ended and the square grew quiet, Jessica, Monica, Rachel, Eli, and their two loyal horses made their way home beneath a sky awash in stars. They walked together, sharing stories and dreams, laughter mingling with the night air. And as they crossed the threshold of their little house at the edge of the woods, Rachel knew that at last she had found her place, a place where kindness and courage and loyalty had turned strangers into family, and a bitter, frigid night into the dawn of a new beginning.